Well, welcome to Prophetic Perspectives. This is a bulletin, an alert on the hot topics that we have facing us right now. I'm here with Chris Reed, and we're going to be addressing these from our perspective. And one thing we always like to remind you of and be reminded of ourselves is we all see in part, we all know in part, we prophesy in part. We're sharing our part. We understand there are other perspectives, other things that also need to be considered to have the big picture, but we want to share our perspective on these things for those of you who have been asking for it, talking about it. And one of them I want to go through after we just, for a minute, are reminded of the three questions that we use for addressing major crises, major issues. First question is, what is happening? We want to have clarity about what is going on in the midst of the confusion that is now clouding and fogging many things. We want to know what is not happening. There is so much clutter, chatter, whatever you want to call it, that, again, it's creating a fog around some of the real issues. We don't want to waste our time fighting enemies that aren't out there. Then what can we do about it? What has God imparted to us for confronting these issues or bringing some resolution, some help to the situation? But one of them, that is, we're having such a meltdown of authority in our country on the one hand, and we're having, I think, an stepping of the boundaries of the constitutional authority on the other hand. And that's pretty typical of, there's a ditch on either side of the path of life. Yeah. Lawlessness on one side, anarchy, and then on the other side you have legalism and people trying to seek dictatorial power. So what is the right path here? How do we get on the path of life between the extremes? Now, one of the things that was deeply troubling to many people was Biden's threat to governors to get out of his way. Now, if the governors have more constitutional authority in a matter than the federal government, then it's the federal government that needs to get out of the way. Now, in the American Republic, to the degree that we are still a republic, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Not the federal government, not the president, not the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is not the supreme law of the land. The Constitution is itself. It's clearly written in plain English. Any American citizen can easily understand if they would just read it. Now, our Constitution is clear. Whatever authority is not specifically given to the federal government is remanded to the states and to the people. Nowhere does the Constitution give the federal government, the president, or anybody in the federal government authority over health issues, even over social issues. It's not there. Now, that is remanded by the Constitution to the states and to the people. And when the federal government tries to seize domain in those areas, it has stepped into unconstitutional waters. It has departed from the Constitution. Now, we have to decide, are we going to obey the Constitution or elected officials who have departed from the Constitution? That's something we're all going to have to deal with and decide. I have decided personally that, when I swore an oath to defend the Constitution, it was not to defend the federal government. It was not to defend any person, but the Constitution itself. And that is the only oath that an office in our country requires, it is to defend the Constitution. Whether it's to be a military officer, an elected official, or anything else, we're sworn to defend the Constitution. To me, that's the default. So you see this pushback by the governors saying, wait a minute, the federal government doesn't have authority there. No one made the president the dictator over our health, our personal health. Now, that remains to be worked out between the states and the people, which it was meant to be that way by our founding fathers, because they're going to be the most in touch with the actual issues. And I think to seize unconstitutional authority is tyranny that has to be resisted. That's my position.
Yeah, I agree. The fact is the governors and the local authorities have more awareness of what is going on the ground in those particular areas. You cannot take a federal position on these health-like issues because the response is different in various parts of the nation. If there's a surge in one place, of COVID or whatever, or any situation, you can't put the same mandates on a place where, there's hardly anything happening. And it just is amazing to me how that this president has taken such a position of the government's right to force something into your body. I mean, this is the same political persuasion that says my body, my choice when it comes to abortion, but when it comes to, the COVID response or it comes to the vaccine or whatever, suddenly you no longer have that say over what happens to your body. And so I think that's the issue, is whether you're for or against the vaccine, it's the freedom to be able to have a say and to decide what's going on in your body. So this is clearly an overreach. And the fact is, our government was set up by our Constitution to have checks and balances to prevent a leader from taking on this dictator, totalitarian approach to where he has to be put in check by the Constitution, via the Congress, via the people, so that he doesn't get out of control. And that's seeming to see what's starting to happen right now.
Yeah. Now, you may say, and I've heard people say, well, Trump issued far more executive orders than Biden has. Well, Biden is just about caught up with him already. But that's not the point. It's not about the number. There are legal, constitutionally legal executive orders. Executive orders are for the executive, the chief executive, the president, to manage the executive branch of government, the things that are under his authority. He can give executive orders for the Defense Department under his, for foreign relations, that is under the president, State Department, all that. That is for him to manage that department, but none of these are mandates within that department. They're not meant to be used for making laws for the land. That's the way they've been used recently, is making laws for the land that everybody's going to obey. Things like they're threatening with, vaccine passports and things like, totally unconstitutional. That's making a law of the land that either you obey or you're going to pay a penalty, and they've been issuing all kinds of threats of penalties. Only Congress can pass laws. The president is he's being not only operating illegally, but unconstitutionally when he tries to use an executive order to make a law for the land. So that's just to help you understand. It's not about the number of executive orders. It's about what they do.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that, just some of the craziness that we're seeing right now, there are people losing their jobs because of this pressure for corporations and businesses to conform. For instance, like we're talking about the vaccine issue. I mean, there is basically a mandate that's going forth on these businesses, and what we have is the whole Biden agenda seems to be, let's keep admitting these unvaccinated immigrants to replace all the American workers who got fired for being unvaccinated. I mean, this is absurdity.
It is.
And it's backwards. And more people, Rick, I think, are waking up to this.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I was shown in a dream that would, I think, result in the revolution that we're headed towards. Another civil war was what would come across our southern border would do such damage in our land that virtually the whole country turned against the federal government. Now, one thing, when I get a dream like that, it's not a dream about something I want, I like, or anything else. Most of the time when I get something like that, I start praying that it doesn't happen. Because I believe there's ways that repentance or intercession, things like that, can maybe keep some of these things from happening. And much of what we're shown that is negative, I think we need to approach that way, unless I get told in the dream or whatever, no, this is inevitable. This is what is coming. Then I have a whole different mindset of not trying to prevent it, but trying to prepare for it and help God's people prepare for it. But we're headed that way and heading that way much faster than I ever foresaw when I started getting those dreams.
One last thing, Rick, if I could add to that. You know, the first American Civil War, a lot of the battle regarding that was federalism, how much power the federal government has versus state governments, as far as that was an issue in the first Civil War. And I think your dream about this second Civil War / American Revolution, I think that we're seeing that battle line again.
Yeah, it's unfolding. And we want to be prepared for it. So how do we prepare? But we're going to talk about that in our next Prophetic Perspectives program, which you don't want to miss. But one other issue, or a couple of other issues I like to touch on, because they're hot button issues right now. And the first one is, who is controlling our president? You remember when he came out recently and said, I have been directed to answer questions at this. Now, who is directing the president? Who in the world has that position? And then in other cases, he's made similar comments that he is being told what to do. Now, there's an outcry being created by this. And who gives the president directives? And, of course, there's a lot of speculation. And until something's proven, it should remain the realm of speculation. But there's a lot of speculation right now that this is fueling that our president is not really in control. He is just a mouthpiece, and he's being told what to do. And there seems to be an increasing evidence to that. I'm just saying, bless his heart, so, this is an issue. We did not elect someone behind the curtain as our president. I'm not sure we elected Biden. Matter of fact, I'm very sure we did not, and that election was stolen. That's my opinion. And I've got plenty of proof to base it on. I'm just saying. But, regardless, we did not elect those people who are behind the screen. Who is running our government now? That needs to be a question we're asking, because we're the sovereign. In America, in the American Republic, the people are the sovereign. The government works for us, not the other way around. And if they have delegated the authority we gave to them, we need to know about it. I know in our local county, we went through 10 years of a lawsuit, in my opinion, totally unnecessary. If those that we had elected to be county, the county commissioners had done their job, instead of letting lawyers, letting administrators and staff people dictate what is done, We didn't elect the staff. Now, we use them. We have to have them in government for it to function. And we need lawyers, we need everything else, but we did not elect them to run things. And when they start running things and the people we elect don't, we have a mess. And we're having an increasing, not just mess, it's getting to the level of disaster in our federal government.
You remember in the movie The Wizard of Oz when Toto pulls back the curtain to reveal that the wizard is not who Dorothy and the other people thought he was.
Yeah.
And pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. That was the statement that was made. That's what the wizard yells in vain. And he had been discovered that they had seen him for who he really was. So I think that's kind of relevant in this situation. You know, there's somebody that's pulling the strings behind the scenes that is not the man that everybody's seeing. And I think this is the Wizard of Oz movie, as old as it is, I think it kind of speaks to this situation. Who's controlling the president?
Yeah.
Tell
Absolutely.
us, Professor Toto. You know,
Yes, and who are the wicked witches? I'm just saying. But this is an important issue. Then we have one last thing, unless you come up with something else real quick. The one to address in this bulletin was General Milley's calls to his Chinese counterpart, saying that before that first thing, America's not planning to attack China. Thank God for that. We don't need that now. But then tell him before there would ever be an attack, he would warn his Chinese counterpart before the American attack. That's treason. There's no other way to explain that. Just think about it. If we did have to go to war with someone, for our top general, who General Milley is right now, for our top person to warn the enemy, it's coming. How many more Americans would be lost because of that, and potentially the whole war be lost because of that? That shows an allegiance to our enemy, our biggest enemy in the world right now, and in some ways our friend. And that's the way international relations works today. You can be a real enemy in one area and a real friend in others. There's some ways when we work with the Chinese, they've helped us, we've helped them. But as our major threat to our nation right now, China, for any general, any military officer or personnel on any level to say that to our enemy is treason. There's no other way to explain that. What is being done about it? And then if he did do that, and, working with others who even knew about it and didn't call his hand, we have got a much more serious problem within our Department of Defense, within the top tier leaders, than was even exposed through the whole Afghanistan debacle.
Yeah. Well, and that Rick makes me think of the prophetic dreams that I've been having since July. The third week of July, I had the dream about the rise of radical Islam and communism coming together. And of course, we've talked about that. But the dream that I also shared after that, which was the Biden team coordinating before the 2020 election behind a darkened window with Chinese government representatives. And then when this story came out, after I had had that dream, and you have the Joint Chiefs of Staff 4 days before the 2020 election is talking to Chinese counterparts, and 4 days before the election, basically giving them heads up, if we were to, do a military attack or military strike, we would tell you ahead of time, which ultimately would endanger the lives of Americans.
Maybe of all Americans.
Exactly. And I think that, that dream is, we're starting to see shutter glimpses of that unfolding right before our eyes and it's not a coincidence that Biden is not even rebuking Milley over this. Well, of course not. You know, I really feel like there's a connection, and we're starting to see that more and more before the 2020 election, of coordination between the deep state in America that was, you know, all hands on deck getting rid of Donald Trump, and then they are talking to our, you know, to the Chinese and to the Chinese counterparts behind the scenes. Well, the darkened windows seem to lighten up, because we're starting to see a little bit more and more, and it's really alarming to think about.
Yeah. One of the things I think you can count on too is these things will get exposed. And to me, this is a part of it. We've been praying for years for the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of truth, to expose what is going on in our government.
Yeah.
It is exposing, and it is exposing a lot by those who are silent to this unbelievable revelation, the top level in our Department of Defense. Unbelievable, you know, treason, and they're not doing anything about it. So that tells us a lot. That's a revelation in itself. Well, listen, this should go out, you know, this right away. We put these bulletins out right away, and we've got coming up just starting this Thursday.
Yeah.
This coming Thursday, the 23rd, our Harvest Conference, and these and other important issues we're going to be digging down on. We've got one of our great warriors of our time, General Jerry Boykin, will be here to share with us. We've got others. But we have to be prepared for the harvest. We've got to understand the times that we live in. Jesus called them hypocrites who could discern the signs of the times, the signs of the weather, better than the signs of the times. So this is a part of our being prepared for the harvest. And I've just had the sense lately, as I've been sharing with Chris and some of our others, this is going to be a really important gathering. If you can't be here, I think we can still fit in a few more, but if you cannot be here, you can watch it online. We will be putting out as much of it as we can. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us for the prophetic perspectives in this prophetic bulletin. Thank you.
Good day.